Viewer discretion advised. What if someone believed they could stop natural disasters by committing murder? In the early 1970s, the residents of California faced not just the threat of earthquakes, but also a series of brutal and bizarre murders that left the state in shock. The perpetrator is Herbert Mullen, infamously known as the Earthquake Killer. Mullen was convinced that human sacrifices were necessary to prevent devastating earthquakes, a belief that drove him to kill 13 innocent people in a horrifying spree. Tonight, we dive deep into the chilling life of Herbert Mullen. We'll explore his seemingly normal childhood, the onset of severe schizophrenia in his early 20s, and the gruesome crimes that stemmed from his delusions. Join us as we uncover the terrifying psychology behind his actions and the tragic consequences of untreated mental illness. Our journey into Mullen's twisted mind will reveal how his psychotic delusions turned deadly and how his case has left an indelible mark on the field of criminal psychology. This is the story of Herbert Mullen, the Earthquake Killer. Herbert Mullen was born in Salinas, California, on April 18, 1947. Growing up in a seemingly typical middle-class family, Mullen's childhood was largely unremarkable. He excelled in school, had friends, and even had a girlfriend. His father, a World War II veteran, was strict but supportive, and his mother was attentive. Despite this seemingly normal upbringing, there were early signs that all was not well beneath the surface. In his teenage years, Mullen began to show signs of emotional instability. He became increasingly paranoid and withdrawn. These early symptoms were subtle and often overlooked, but they marked the beginning of a descent into severe mental illness that would later have catastrophic consequences. As Mullen entered his early 20s, his mental health rapidly deteriorated. He began experiencing severe mood swings and delusions. In 1969, at the age of 21, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. This diagnosis, however, came after several failed attempts to seek help. His behavior became erratic, and he started hearing voices that he believed were commanding him to commit violent acts to prevent impending disasters. Mullen's belief that he could prevent earthquakes by sacrificing human lives grew stronger daily. He became obsessed with the idea that his actions were necessary to save California from destruction. This delusion took over his life, leading him down a path of unimaginable horror. Mullen's psychosis worsened, and he became convinced that he was destined to prevent natural disasters through human sacrifices. His delusions were further fueled by his misuse of drugs, which exacerbated his already fragile mental state. He believed that his murders were a form of divine intervention and that the voices in his head were guiding him to fulfill a crucial mission. By the early 1970s, Mullen's mental state had deteriorated to the point where he could no longer distinguish between reality and his delusions. He began planning and executing a series of brutal murders, convinced that each life he took was preventing a catastrophic earthquake. Mullen's criminal activities escalated rapidly. He meticulously planned his attacks, choosing victims at random and killing them in cold blood. His methods were brutal and senseless, reflecting the chaos in his mind. He believed that the voices he heard were instructions from higher powers, and he precisely carried out their commands. Between 1972 and 1973, Mullen killed 13 people, including children, in a series of bizarre and horrifying attacks. His crimes were not motivated by personal gain or revenge, but by a twisted belief that he was saving the world. This made his actions all the more terrifying and challenging for the public to comprehend. Herbert Mullen's first murder took place on October 13, 1972. His victim was a homeless man named Lawrence White, whom Mullen beat to death with a baseball bat. This seemingly random act of violence shocked the community and marked the beginning of a terrifying killing spree. Mullen later claimed that the voices in his head told him that killing White was necessary to prevent an earthquake. Following his first murder, Mullen's killing spree continued unabated. He targeted a diverse range of victims, from a priest to a group of teenagers to a family in their home. The randomness of his victims and the brutality of his methods earned him the nickname, the Earthquake Killer. Each murder was carried out with a chilling sense of purpose, as Mullen believed he was fulfilling a divine mandate to save California from disaster. His crimes left a trail of fear and confusion in their wake. Law enforcement struggled to understand the motive behind the murders, and terror gripped the community. Mullen's ability to evade capture for as long as he did only added to the fear and uncertainty surrounding his actions. Herbert Mullen was finally captured on February 13, 1973, after a botched attempt to kill a man named Fred Perez. Mullen was apprehended without incident, and the evidence against him was overwhelming. His fingerprints and a confession tied him to the series of murders, bringing an end to his reign of terror. Mullen's trial was a media sensation. The gruesome details of his crimes and his bizarre behavior in court captivated the public's attention. During the trial, Mullen's defense team argued that he was not guilty because of insanity, citing his severe schizophrenia and delusions. However, the prosecution presented a strong case that he knew his actions were wrong and that he could have chosen not to act on his delusions. Psychological evaluations revealed the depth of Mullen's mental illness, but the jury ultimately found him guilty of 10 murders. He was sentenced to life in prison, where he remains to this day. Psychologists and criminologists have studied Herbert Mullen's case extensively. Experts agree that his severe schizophrenia played a crucial role in his actions. His delusions and hallucinations drove him to commit acts of violence that he believed were necessary to save lives. Mullen's case highlights the dangers of untreated mental illness and the potential for individuals with severe psychiatric disorders to pose a threat to society. The case of Herbert Mullen has had a significant impact on the field of criminal psychology. It underscored the importance of early intervention and treatment for individuals with severe mental illnesses. Mullen's actions and the subsequent analysis of his case have contributed to a better understanding of the tie between mental illness and violent behavior. The lessons discovered from his case continue to inform modern forensic psychology and criminal profiling. Herbert Mullen's life and crimes are a terrifying reminder of the effects of untreated mental illness. From his troubled early years and the onset of schizophrenia to his horrific killing spree and eventual capture, Mullen's story is a chilling journey into the mind of a madman. Reflecting on the complexity and horror of his case, we are reminded of the significance of mental health care and the necessity to address psychological issues before they escalate into violence. We invite you to share your thoughts on Herbert Mullen's case in the comments below. What do you think could have been done to prevent his descent into madness? If you find this video intriguing, please like it, subscribe to the Phantasmal Eternity channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest content. In our next video, we'll explore another spine-chilling story from the annals of criminal history. Stay tuned for more psychological horror and true crime stories that will keep you in your seat.